Loves here, and today we're going to be talking about counting, one of my favorite subjects. And what is counting? It's also known as subdividing, and it's super important for your understanding of rhythm. So if you're taking a class, right, and I know we haven't gotten to this level yet, we're on basic counting. We've just learned what meter is, and you're taking a class, and what the instructor will do in a musicianship class is they will do something called dictation, and they will play out, or let me do something that I've done a little bit more of. So something I had an instructor that would put a piece of, they have these books just full of rhythms, just tons and tons of rhythms. And what we had to do, and it was really hard, was we had to conduct the meter with one hand. We had to stomp our foot in time. So if you're a drummer, maybe you got this easy peasy. But you had to stomp your foot on the downbeat, so it made sense. That was easy enough to do. But then you had to tap the rhythm on your one hand, and you had to count it out loud. Now, of course, when I was in private lessons and instructions, I would have to, instead of doing that was like really hard. Like if you could do that, you were going to be a master of rhythm, man. The next level was we had to count. This was a much more common. I'm pretty sure almost every kid who's been in band has done this on some level. They put a rhythm up on the board, and then you have to say it out loud and clap it. And it's not quite as easy as it looks if you don't understand rhythm. And going through junior high, the way I survived was I would listen to the recording, and then I would play the same rhythm as that. So I was fortunate enough to have the ability to hear a rhythm and just remember how it went. Some people can't do that, and they actually really heavily rely on the theory of how rhythm works. I had no clue. So I was incapable of reading or writing new music because I had no clue how rhythm worked. So when I was starting out, the way I would do it, because I had no concept of this, was I would just try 100 different combinations until I got one that I liked. And then I would copy and paste and manipulate that. So let's talk about this counting thing, because as you can see now, it's a very important concept. So counting allows us to subdivide a rhythm, become aware of the spaces in between. It will allow you to become aware of syncopations. And the way it works is, if you remember from our previous meter video, we know that this is beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. And we would simply count these as they are. So if these are quarter notes, we would simply count these as 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy, right? The next step is, of course, eighth notes. And so if you take a music fundamentals class, they'll cover this stuff too. So eighth notes, we know that there are twice as many of them, right? They're eighth. So there's 4 more. And the way this works is, how do you count this? And we count them with the word and. So we go, these would of course be our beats, right? So we would say 1, 2, 3, 4. And these guys are the and beats. They're also known as upbeats. However, it can get a little confusing depending on what meter you're in, because the upbeat could also be considered beats 2 and 4. So we're going to ignore that for now. Basically, all we need to know is that these are the and beats. You'll hear people in band say, oh, come in on the and of 3. And they're talking about, oh, here's beat 3, and here is beat 3 and. That's the and of beat 3. Or they say, come in on the and of 2, and there's the and of 2. Here's beat 2, here's the and of beat 2. Now, of course, we're not dealing with traditional notation, but that's the concept. So you would count this as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And it's really that simple. But in context of a meter, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So you see how you're doing it? We're counting 1 and 2 before it hits. Now, we're not going to get into how you say the stuff out loud, because that's like, we're getting a little too crazy at this point. I just want you to be aware of this. And if you're really intrigued, I encourage you to go buy a book of rhythms. There's different books out there. I don't have one that particularly comes to mind, but I know there's a couple of textbooks that are on this subject, where all they do is they give you tons and tons of rhythms and you interpret them. You have to interpret them and you see if you can do it. And it really, really improves your sight reading, because then you can look at something and immediately know what the rhythm will be. And that's a powerful thing. We're going to be moving more and more that direction, because if you ever see me work, and if I'm working fast, because there's like a trade-off between, like, do you want to contemplate what you're doing, or do you want to just be impulsive and write things? And so the impulsive person relies a lot really heavily on either they'll listen to it 100 times, but I'm talking about you're just writing crap, and then you write the whole thing out, and then you play it and you're like, yep, that's what I wanted. that is. People who get this and they practice. You got to practice it. So our next level is, of course, 16th notes. There are twice as many 16th notes. There are 16 in a 4/4 measure. And what this has to do is we could say now, how do you count these? Now we could go a level further. Wow, I was stuttering right there, and do 30-second notes. But I have never heard of a system that counts to 30 seconds. I'm sure they're out there, but I, in my musical career, have not run into it, and it's not super practical at that point. You just go do, like you just go with it. I've not like strategically approached it. If you get into older music though, some of it was written in weird meters where like 30-second notes are almost like eighth notes. And so that gets a little weird, but we're not going to be dealing with any of that kind of music. We're just dealing with basic counting structures, because this will get you through like 90% of what you need to get through in music, unless you get into weird stuff. If you're just staying in like pop and, relatively modern music, this will get you through like 99% of it. So the 1% will be a rarity. All right, so these are 16th notes. The way you count these, so we have our beats 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have the ands, right? And. And of course, we define our ands by the number of the beat. So right, this is the and of 4. So we have those stay the same. See, so it's not that complicated. We could see the correlation between the beats and the ands. Next up, we have these middle guys, and these middle guys, I've heard a huge number of systems on how to count this. And this is so we have 1, and then this is the E. 1 E and That's the one I was taught. That's the one I'm going to teach you. There are other people use other syllables, but the principle remains the same. We're just giving it a name so that we can refer to it and be more aware of it so we can use it. So this would be the E of 1. Now, 16th note rhythms are really fun, especially when you get into syncopations. They are the ones that you can clap over and over and over sometimes and just not get them right. And, well, you can get them right, but as soon as you try speeding it up, you'd be surprised. You really got to practice it. So we have 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and now I counted that out of rhythm, but it'd be 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And so by combining these various rhythms, these various ways of breaking up our bars, our measures, we can create, a huge amount of rhythms. There's one more rhythm that we should cover, and those are tuplets. So tuplets in FL, you would go to 1/3 step, and you're capable of putting what was 1 quarter note. You can now put 3 even divisions of that, and it looks like that. So this is 3. So this is sort of a weird deal. And when we get into different meters, we can switch between these different sorts of time. All we need to be aware of is that this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And now I've heard of various ways of saying this one too. Some people count the beats, so these are still our beats, right? But this guy doesn't line up with anything, so we have to give it a different name, and neither does this guy. It's this weird offhand thing. If you've never heard Chopin's prelude, what is that called? Chopin's prelude in C-sharp minor. I believe it's a C-sharp minor. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the piece. He has running 6 tuplets against a straight rhythm. So your one hand's trying to play like a rhythm like this, something that's in straight time, and then the other one's trying to play in this like weird compound borrowed meter thing, and well, not borrowed meter, it's just a compound meter, and so it's like it goes like this, and that's the one hand. The other hand's going like it's doing a different thing, and it's eventually. And so students will sit here and try to be like, where do these things line up? And then they realize, holy freaking crap, they don't line up anywhere. So what do I do? So what you do is you learn one hand really well. Well, they do line up here, but you learn one hand really well, and then you learn the other hand, separately, and then you just put them together. At least that's what I did. There are a couple spots where things line up and stuff, but for the most part, I was the most successful method I found. So these are counted. So the method I use is some people say triple it, triple it, triple it, but then you have no clue what beat you're on really. So I use olit. Or now in the book, there was a textbook I used lolly. So it's 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 3 lolly, 4 lolly. I used 1 tuplet, 2 tuplet, 3 tuplet, 4 tuplet, whatever you use. I still tend to say triplet because to me, it seems the most intuitive, even though you don't have a beat there. Most people will use it, at least the ones I've talked to and have had response to. Maybe, I don't know, somewhere else in the country, everyone does the lolly thing. I don't know. I don't have that kind of experience, but I've always heard it as triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it. But 1 lolly is a little more specific and useful, and I feel like lolly is a little easier to say than tuplet. But they are called tuplets because you're basically taking something that was and you're breaking it into these uneven parts. It's called so this is like compound meter, and this is simple meter. So that's when you break up a beat into, we're going to be talking about this later, but it's when you break up a beat into 2 parts, and compound meters when you break up a beat into 3 parts. And so like, for example, 2/4 is a simple meter because you're breaking up a measure into 2 parts. The quarter note gets the beat, and there are 2 quarter notes in a measure. So that's 2/4, right? We talked about it last time. 3/4, of course, that is a compound meter, and that's because the quarter note gets the beat, but there are 3 quarter notes in a measure now. So we know that there's 3 because it's 3, so there's 3 beats, but the quarter note gets the beat because it's a 3/4. Honestly, I've heard it and I agree that the bottom thing should be replaced with the symbol of the note. So it should be like 3 with a quarter note symbol. So 3/4 or 3/8 or whatever. That would be a way more intuitive use. But then you can't do weird ratios like 16-15 or something like that. You can't do stuff like that. But it's this interesting deal. Or yeah, you get what I'm saying. 16-15. I don't even know how you would denote that. Probably with some dotted symbol or something. But you have like 9/8. So there are 9 eighth notes in a measure, stuff like that. Which is also, of course, there are 9, and of course you can break that up into 3, 3, and 3 because that's 9, and so 3 sets of eighth notes, and that would be considered a compound meter versus a simple meter, something like, I don't know, 4/4, stuff like that. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I know it's a little bit to consume at the beginning. What you can do to get good at it is just write out various rhythms, Maybe make this chart and then just delete random notes until you have something that fills up the whole measure. Oh, you know what? You probably want to, if you're going to do triplets, I recommend doing simple stuff at the beginning. So maybe do something like that, and then something like this. And then, just count it out, So here we go. Here's our rhythm. So what would that sound like? So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, triple it, 2 and 3 and a 1, triple it, 2 or 3 and I lost my beat count, but it's 1 or 1. Let's do the lolly thing. So 1, 2 lolly, 3 and 4e and a 1, 2 lolly, 3 and 4e and there you have it. Now we know, that's what that would sound like. So if you were to write a rhythm, you were to do that, you would intuitively know it's just making the sounds. And then, of course, when you get more advanced, you start tossing in syncopation. So different things receive different volume level emphases, shifting where the beat feels, which we'll talk about, and also where you write your notes. So is there a leap there? What leap? How does that leap affect your rhythm? Stuff like that. So if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.